The and it just so happened we had a merger in between, but this this change had nothing to do with that, honest. We're over here because we think it's a great place to have a developers organization meeting, and Bill walked out just in time before I was going to have him talk about what the center is. How many are familiar with the center's purpose of life is and all that right here? Okay. We do have both the Hobbit and the Intel development kit and PCs to run it successfully, you know, without hassles using the Crick Hollow cards. So you can do development here. You can test the metal out. And we are, EO actually has been good enough to donate a 440 and an 880 to be used here at the center for testing purposes. So that's the idea of the center. So, and let's see, check my EO here. The newsletter.
How do you want to schedule that through, Bill?
Give him, when he comes back, we'll ask him to give you more details on that. You call him up. The newsletter is kind of also been in the transition. It has been too smooth, but we do have a special edition of the newsletter with nothing but my writing in it, unfortunately. But we're going to have all the members send out full-blown newsletters real soon now. They sound like Apple, you know. Bill, could you tell the members about the center, how you get access to the Penpoint development environment?
Hi, I'm Bill McCarty, technical coordinator here at the center. Welcome. Hope you found it okay. Those of you that didn't, you're not here, and I don't care. The center opened up in April, and basically we're here to support developers of all sizes, one-man, lady operations, up to Fortune 500 companies. We've got a cross-section of hardware platforms, operating systems, applications, a mix and match of the above, and the facilities to use them in for testing, development, showcasing, kicking around, seeing if some viable notion will fly. We're in the process, with some help from Clay and folks like Dick Schachter, of getting our EOs in-house. The center is quite heterogeneous in its design, and we will even be supporting other pen-based systems, i.e. Newman, and taking care of other aspects along those lines. We also offer non-technical support in the order of workshops and roundtable discussions on things like venture capital funding, legal aspects. Today we had one on writing a winning business plan. The center itself is a public-private nonprofit organization put together by the City of San Jose, Novell, and the Software Entrepreneurs Forum. It is its resources are available to the public as well as to members. Typical membership is $195 a year. The usage fees for members range anywhere from $17 an hour for a basic PC up to $195 a day for a Unix workstation, and a pen-based system would fall somewhere in between there. Non-members may use the facility as well at about a 20% premium. Immediately following the meeting, I'll be giving a tour of the center and answering any specific questions that you might have.
Great, thanks, Bill. My role in life is to support Hobbit developers. So my number, by the way, is on the newsletter to give me a call, what it takes to develop for the Hobbit. I'll give you all the help you can. The official channel is through EO. So you want to try that. But if you have any technical questions as far as getting set up here, I'll also help you out on over here. Also, any comments about the meeting, where you'd like to see the WPDO evolve, what kind of information, the setup, you know, comments in general. There's an email address. Helen, our newsletter editor, Helen Hegelheimer, is going to take on a lot of that, and she doesn't know it yet. No. Yeah, she's taken on the newsletter, and I don't know if she's too happy about it or not. I'm just trying to figure this out. But so far, from what I've seen, she's doing a great job. So then let's see, what else do we have? The rest of the agenda, by the way, will be EO at 7:30, and then at 8:30 we're going to go into a break, and then we're going to, after that, David Bieberman hopefully will show you the next generation of Pencil and give you a demo of that. It'll be a little bit more informal at that time, so you can talk about the development environment with David. We could do it here. Also, there's a few developers who would like to show their wares over in the lab right here. Hopefully we'll have that set up to do that. Hopefully as time goes on, we'll be, get our act together, and we'll be able to do things like, show off some software and stuff. That's the goal anyway. Exchange chess programs and stuff like that. How many follow CompuServe? Okay. So you're pretty much with the press release announcement of AT&T and all that, and what's, general. Okay. In the newsletter, I pretty much have all my my thoughts about what a personal communicator is and what all this stuff about evolving towards a personal communicator means, as opposed to pin computers, PDAs, and all that. I have my own opinions. I think I made that aware on CompuServe 2 a little bit. But I really do feel optimistic about this change. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a fool enough to run this organization. I think this organization, more than ever, is important. And one of the things I do truly believe is these personal communicators they require ISVs more than anything else. And but not just your average Joe ISVs, the ISVs that can think about new paradigms. And that's really important. And really nothing's changed since the beginning of the Penpoint days when you think about it. I mean, we're really talking about adding the real big hook of the personal communicator to the consumer. That's one thing we've been missing. We've had this great solution for all this time, but we never could find a problem. And yeah, we could have, could have marketed better and all that. But I think you got to have a hook to sell the dream. And I think that's what a personal communicator is. So my concept of a walking office is really, to me, a hook. I've been to Nirvana. I know what it's like. I mean, yeah, sure, it's, I'm an expert Penpoint user. I can get around a lot of the problems with the machine. But this thing truly is the future. I really believe in this. And as a software developer, I mean, I can't stop thinking of all the ideas and how to make this cool, beyond just cool technology. And I think that's what the merger is really about in one sense, is that it's a big step towards maturity. We found a market, we're going to sell it. And the guys from EO hopefully can tell you who all these various customers really are that we're going after. I'm sure the developers have a lot of questions on that one. So, let's see. Any announcements from the audience?
Yes, my name's Jeremy Newman. I'm over with my colleague Arthur Llewellyn here from Peripheral Vision UK. We're announcing a Penpoint tool at Mobile World on Tuesday, which handles the signature and pen computing. We'll be next door to demonstrate that and its corresponding signature server on Penpoint, OS2 and Windows. So if anyone wants to drop by, we'll be pleased to describe it to you. Thanks very much.
Great. Bill?
I've been asked to announce that Robert Carr will be speaking at the Software Entrepreneurs Forum PenSig next week, which will be at the San Jose Convention Center. And that's going to be at 7 o'clock. And the free passes that you may or may not have gotten in the mail say 9 o'clock, and they're wrong.
What about those of us who did not get the free passes in the mail?
Then you can get in free anyway.
Oh, okay.
Free at 9 o'clock.
So Bill sent you?
It's not clear exactly what DCI sent out.
Where have you been? supposedly I'm getting an 880 too. And you know, we'll have something to show off here. That will happen at the end of the session. The, by the way, what company is Robert from now? Where's those guys? There is a representative here from EO. He's the guy with the striped shirt here. I told you I'd point you out. He's really, he's not an official representative of EO. He's just an engineer, the kind of guy we like to attack, right? So, and actually, that's my goal with the WPDO, is to have it more engineering oriented. I don't really want to sponsor super marketing demo type things. I really want engineers to give some straight talks about their products and hopefully show off some software source, stuff like that. Yeah. And that kind of thing. Well, what about the WPDO? Is any questions out there in the audience about your questions regarding the status of WPDO with all these changes? As official representative of WPDO now, I'm supposed to have these answers, right?
Where are the free refreshments for tonight's meeting?
Yeah, that's free refreshments. There is coffee and water in the little kitchen right over there. Leave a quarter. There's a cup, right?
To be honest, there is coffee and water. Help yourself. There are soda and juices for a measly 50-cent contribution.
The cookie. I just noticed the cookie mobile crashed, and there's some people being rescued right now. So we'll do a better job on that one too. Sorry, David. I thought you were still cookie man.
That's Tom Hogan.
Okay. Yeah.
We have more
Anything else
announcements.
about the WPDO?
No, I got
David.
announcements when you finish the WPDO stuff.
Yeah, was there any more announcements, by the way? David?
I may not be running the joint anymore, but I still have announcements.
You can run.
No.
You can run
No,
again.
No, please. A friend of mine at EO is kind enough to send me monthly the EO job postings lists. So if anyone here is interested in getting a job with EO, I'll leave this on the table up here. Feel free to take a look at that during the break. As those of you who've been to these meetings before know, we tape all these meetings, and I also tape anything else I can get my hands on that has anything to do with Penpoint. I've now branched out into other areas as well, including the Apple Newton. Enough so that I've produced a catalog, the videotape catalog, which you'll find on the table out there, the round table out there. If you find anything you like, there's ordering information on the back page, so you might find that of interest if you're interested in pen computing. And my last announcement, on January 10th, we are going to be, we being me, are going to do a 5-hour telecourse, satellite telecourse on pen computing. I put a bunch of flyers out there on the table as well describing that. We'll talk about what pen computing is and isn't, who the major players are in hardware and software, demonstrate Windows for pen computing or whatever Microsoft has at that time, Penpoint, and that other box that was recently introduced by some company down in Cupertino. I forget the name of it, the FIG or something like that, and other pen operating environments. We'll talk about application development tools. We'll characterize failures and successes so you get an idea of what works and what doesn't, and various other interesting things about pen computing. So if you're interested in learning more about pen computing, pick up one of these flyers, January 10th, 1994, coming to a satellite television dish near you. That's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Ex-president. How many people here are currently Penpoint developers? Okay, how many are here checking out the scene, checking out whether Penpoint's really worth my time? Okay.
Yeah, really.
How many here are in a nasty mood? All right, I can tell. There's just don't have that crack of laughter, except why? No. After the what we want to do when I'm debating, Jerry, hi. After the meeting, we're going to do also a quick demo of the personal communicator, if you haven't seen that before. And I can give you a spiel on what development is like, an overview of that. What? It's great. And why some of us are Penpoint developers, why I plan on continuing being a Penpoint developer, and why I plan on starting a company and making lots of money with it. The other thing is, if the person doesn't come to show soon, we may go for a small break, and you can do the tour of the center and show off the wares.
I'm not going anywhere.
Great. And let's see, what else am I forgetting? I'm sure there's something else. We're breaking off to the Tide House after this. I need it, I tell you. Do the Apple thing. You know what we could do? Right now, I'd like to introduce you to Jerry Sadin. He's the manager of the technical services group at EO currently.
Before you introduce, let me just say this. Mike
Sure.
Palmer is supposed to be the speaker. It was very, very hard to find this place.
Yeah.
And I believe he was intending to show up.
Okay.
So I wasn't really prepared to speak, although I can talk to a bunch of issues
Sure.
regarding EO-Go and those sorts of things.
Okay.
But maybe you want to wait a little longer until Mike does show.
Sure.
And if he turns out not to, I'll be happy to entertain questions.
Yeah. The
Whose map made it difficult to get here?
It was just the inverse of what it should be, right?
we only wanted the smart guys to show up, though.
It was a test. Those of you who made it test.
Also due here, Mike Homer, VP of, what is it? What is he? Software
The
engineering?
VP of Marketing and Software Development at what is now the new EO.
Okay. And Gary Bard from EO Evangelism, and Mark Tuberville, who is also Developer Relations at EO, will be here. All of them, I guess, have had trouble with the map.
Gary Bard's been here. He's got no excuse.
Okay. A lot of them are up north, so.
Could be traffic.
What-
No?
Currently, what we could get into the Q&A, get all the questions ready for him, and then when he comes in, hammer him. But let me give you an overview of what's happened in the last 2 months. Penpoint, kind of a paraphrase of the press release, and Penpoint has pretty much been, like I said, a problem searching for a solution, and AT&T came in and thought they had that solution. And the Hobbit Group is, which I am currently working at, is a big part of helping that definition of what a personal communicator is. That's why I'm pretty much jazzed and sold on the personal communicator. Actually, I was sold on Penpoint before the actual, before I started working at AT&T. I was just a starving ISV and I needed a job, right? So what I wanted, but when I understood the personal communicator vision, I really got sold into it. I mean, it's, and hopefully tonight I can sell you on it and tell you what it's about. But what my background is, I started out as ISV. I saw Robert Carr demo Penpoint in '91, and I fell in love with it like a lot of you guys did. I fell in love with the cool technology that we saw. And then something happened, you know. Everybody thought that it would just remarkably be a successful happening thing that would make us all lots of money because it was so cool, right? Well, within a year, I could think it was kind of obvious that things just don't happen overnight like that. There's beyond just visionary stuff. You have to get into, you have to have a mature market, something to hold on, something to hook into. And that's when I joined AT&T, actually. And hi, there's that 880.
Right behind you.
Thank you. Great. That's when I joined AT&T and really got hooked. I finally believed that we found a real platform that we can it could really truly be that so-called marketing thing called a revolution. So I am currently working with EO and what was Go, EO North now it's called, and AT&T ME, and we're trying, the goal is, and let there be no question about it, there's no barriers to ISVs as far as developing and what they want to do. That's the goal, especially for the grassroots developers. And as WPDO president, I'm going to try to make this organization representing the grassroots developers, and that's why I really want your comments to me on how we can best do that. So I also see the WPDO as a heavy, heavy interest group, a heavy, heavy sounding voice to this new organization that, quite frankly, is a little bit confused themselves. I mean, change is not good in the short term. I happen to believe that change is good in the long term in this case, but it's never good. And a lot of you developers out there, when you don't know, you assume the worst. The unknown is also something that's not something you like. So hopefully, in the coming months, WPDO will be a great flow of information to you, and I'm going to be very aggressive on making sure that happens. Tonight, I'm not doing such a good job, but hopefully I'll open up that valve of information flow to you. That's my goal. And, you know, Jerry, you're going to be on soon as far as, you know,
not going to be here.
well, EO is really, all of them wanted to come here, but as you know, with change, lots of things, lots of meetings. Nobody's had even lunch or breakfast at the top echelons of these groups. I mean, these guys are looking pretty tired, and that's because things are happening quick, and it's really hard for them. So, you know, not making excuses for them, I sort of understand what's going on. It's not that they don't have all the answers. It's that they're making the answers up right now. You know? So but let me tell you, trust me, it's good.
I can try to help you and maybe get the story.
Yeah, let's.
He's doing a great job, even though he said that he didn't think he was. Now, as I say, I didn't really come here prepared to speak, but I'll do it anyway. How many of you, first of all, have been using Penpoint or working with Penpoint for a while? Okay, I mean, obviously this is certainly the organization for that. How many of you have a semi-clear idea of at least what's happened due to the merger and maybe some of the reasons for it or any of that? Okay. All right, what are some of the reasons you think? Let's hear. Rumor mill. Goes anyway. That's a good one.
I'm sorry, what's your name first?
My name is Jerry Sadin. I'm the Director of Technical Services at It Is Still Go. And we haven't yet become EO, although, of course, at this point we have announced the merger, which is, of course, owned by AT&T and all that. So you've probably all seen the press releases and what that's all about. Fundamentally, there's been a lot of things going on. Obviously, Go is an independent operating system company since 1987, so we've been around for quite some time. The EO recently shipped, I guess, in the last 6-8 months, something like that. I'm new enough to the organization. I don't have all the exact dates. I joined around the 1st of June. Before that, I was in the Unix marketplace. I also, like Clay, got involved in this because I love the technology. Thought it was really neat stuff. It also looked like all the elements of the market were coming together, the prices, the telephony, the size of the devices, the power of the devices, and everything else just seemed to be there. And of course the interface seemed really good as well. So it seemed that it was the device that you could actually use without knowing a whole lot about computers. And there was a real appeal there for me, because coming into the Unix market, as you know, there isn't exactly that same appeal. So anyway, this seemed like an opportunity for all the right elements to come together. Well, I think one of the things that people recognized is that for a software company to make it, it's very clear that you've got to sell millions upon millions of units. Because if you consider the fact that you're licensing an operating system and you're getting well under $100 a pop for it, think of what it takes to sustain a 200-person organization. So when you start doing the math, it starts to look like it's going to take a long time and you really need a lot of funding. So it looked like the appropriate model, given that EO had obviously adopted the Penpoint operating system. In fact, EO, of course, and Go at one point had split. They were the same company. They decided to move the companies apart. It looked like the right thing, with AT&T's help, was to put the companies back together and to create a market maker. And the idea, of course, is to create a device in combination with an operating system to really facilitate full integration. And to really do to get the right kind of device out. In other words, it's very clear also that in order to optimize the software for speed, you need to be looking at hardware issues as well, particularly if you want to try to keep the price down. So if you could really control both the hardware optimization side, the software optimization side, you can really get the best combination and make the right kinds of trade-offs that you really need to do to optimize in every direction. So that was the idea in pulling the hardware company and the software company together. Now, of course, what's AT&T's take in all this? There's a couple of things. One is that if you take a look at the kinds of services that they provide, one thing is for certain, you can't really get to all of them very easily through a standard touch tone telephone. The problem is that even if you knew what number to dial to get to some particular service, it's certainly far from intuitive. So one of the concepts is to take a new kind of paradigm and make it very, very easy for people to access these services. And then at the same time, if you had a device that could do it easily and it was all integrated in, and it was also something that contained other elements of computing devices, where all these things were coming together, means that there's going to be lots of traffic on their line. So when you really take a look at the spectrum of things that AT&T is looking to accomplish, also given the fact that they happen to own the rights to the Hobbit processor and all that, there's a big, big win for them. So for them, from an investment standpoint, it makes a whole lot of sense. So putting the companies together in this way, I think combines the best elements of a software organization, a hardware company, with the backing and muscle of AT&T. Now, just to give you an idea, there is no control by AT&T in the sense that they don't come in and on a day-to-day level run the company. And the idea there, of course, is to maintain independence, because if you want something to survive and be really innovative, small groups of people that are really smart, willing to take chances, and have some sort of an entrepreneurial feel are likely going to get to some vision more than something that kind of comes in from the outside. Now, obviously, they've got a lot of visionaries, and they're doing some amazing things as well. But I think they recognized that if you took a look at who were in these companies, what the visions were, that if they were to just get behind the idea and fund it and help out here and there with some technology, you have to understand that one of the good things that we get out of this whole thing is access to Bell Labs technology. When you put it all together, there's some really interesting synergy there. So they believe, of course, that the best thing is to allow us to do what we've said we were going to do, as far as charter to go out and build a really good personal communicator device. So that's really the idea. Bring these two companies together, hardware, software, get the best product out the door fastest, establish it as a market maker. At that point, we intend to license the technology. So one of the elements of the GoEO merger that, of course, we haven't really made any statements about in any big way is that there will be a separate licensing entity which will license the hardware and software design. So this way, other OEMs who are interested in this can go out and copy the design. And then we now have a standard platform, much the way that the PC became a standard platform in the early 80s. Now, of course, the economies of scale at that point kick in, the diversity of a device that can come from multiple vendors, the vendor neutrality angle. One of the questions that we've been getting a lot of since the merger is, oh, you guys are now proprietary. Well, the answer is that we are not proprietary. I mean, obviously, an EO machine is a proprietary technology owned by a single vendor. But if this design can be licensed and people can adopt it and people can sell it from a variety of companies who have different screen sizes and hardened devices and small PDA type devices, now you've got a range of machines from very small to fairly large machines that are for special purposes, but the interface will be the same. The integration with telephony and some other particular kinds of services like content providers and a variety of other things. And when you put it all together, it seems like a pretty good strategy. And at this point, we haven't yet, as I say, made all the announcements, and all the details are still being worked. But we're very, very close to having something. I'm hoping that, as again, I say, Mike Homer walks in the door any second and decides to give us as much as he can. But why don't I just sort of open it up to questions, waiting for maybe some of the specifics that Mike is going to talk about when he finally gets here. Yes?
I'm particularly interested in what your position is on the x86 architecture. Now, it's easy to say, yes, we're going to support it, and then not really support it. So I'd really rather hear, are you going to aggressively support the x86 architecture? Are you just going to support it for the people who have, signed up in the past and not really aggressively pursue it? Are you going to abandon it? What's the future of the x86?
Well, the easy answer, of course, is that we haven't made a statement on that yet. That's probably the single most controversial aspect of this entire merger. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen to the x86 product. And I think very shortly we're going to make some announcements that will clear that up. And so it would be inappropriate for me to say definitively, oh yeah, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. What I can say is that we're clearly going to support the people that have invested in the technology. where obviously right now, if you look at the EO perspective, clearly the focus is on Hobbit technology. I mean, there's no denying that. And I think a lot of you have probably drawn your own conclusions from that. I think what you're going to see, though, if you take a look at the marketplace, is that there are going to be some vendors who want to work very closely with us, who happen to also be shipping Intel products. So I think the issue is that we've worked very closely in the Intel marketplace, and it looked like it was a good architecture to work with. There's a couple of issues there for us that make it a little bit problematic. One is that the power consumption for most of these devices is actually fairly high, even though there are low power consumption devices on the horizon. Right now, those things aren't as well worked out as certainly on the Hobbit side. Clearly, that's a very, very big issue with portable devices. The other issue is the price of the devices are actually quite high, and yes, you could look at the EO and say, yeah, the price is kind of high too, but I think you're going to see some changes there fairly rapidly. And then, of course, there's the ability to run multiple operating systems, pen-based operating systems, pen-DOS, pen for Windows, those sorts of things. So what you see at this point is that most of the OEMs who are shipping pen-based Intel devices have not said, oh yeah, we're going to support this or we're going to support this. They've essentially taken a tactical approach to supporting the operating systems. They'll put up with whatever operating system you can support yourself, but in terms of active support, we haven't seen a whole lot of that, or active investment, we haven't seen a whole lot of that. If you've worked in a system software company, you know that it's very, very expensive. We're looking at some of the most complicated kinds of things that have ever been produced. An operating system that's 32 bits and object-oriented and go down the list is a pretty sophisticated thing, even though it appears on this cute little device called an EO. And right now, I mean, Go had been, prior to the acquisition, a 200-person company. So when you look at the investment required to sustain a sophisticated system software device, and you're not getting what appears to be the kind of investment that you need from the OEM community to support that, I mean, independent investment, it becomes very, very difficult. So we can decide to, oh yeah, we're going to support this ourselves, and then try to do all the marketing and everything else, and it just became a fairly difficult uphill battle. So again, I'm not prepared to make the official statement. That should come within the next couple of weeks. Mike Homer may be able to address that issue to some degree, but one of the things I can say is we absolutely need the support of the OEMs to succeed. You can't just go out there on your own and do it. It's just too big a job. So we will support the people that have purchased these devices in the ways that we've contracted with the OEMs, but we actually need their support. So anyway, yes? Well, again, it's a little bit too early to tell. What we've been doing, of course, is going out and visiting with our OEM partners and trying to understand, explaining to them, first of all, our plans under non-disclosure, trying to understand their position, their interest. And right now, we are working deals with many of these OEMs who are now finally understanding the kinds of things that we're looking to do. And at this point, again, I'm not prepared to announce anything. But again, Mike, I think, can maybe talk a little bit more about specific OEMs that we are working with.
I was thinking more in general terms. Are they generally pissed off? Are they sort of neutral on it?
I think that the merger caught a lot of people by surprise. A lot of people assumed that Penpoint was just going to keep doing what it was doing, and Go was going to continue on in the same way. So I think that, I mean, I'm personally getting lots and lots of calls in the tech services area. We talk to a lot of these OEMs and have a lot of relationships from a tech support side. So a lot of these guys are calling me up. I used to go visit a lot of them, and they're saying, well, what's the story? What are you going to do? Are you going to support us? What are you going to do this way, that way? And it's really a higher level issue. So Bill Campbell is out there running around figuring out with them whether or not they want to continue working with us. And it's actually a fairly complicated set of things that needs to occur now. And like I say, I don't really have any good, real hardcore answers specifically. Other questions?
Is there a plan for an interim documentation fix, particularly in the communications areas? It's relatively incomplete or inadequate.
When you say documentation fixed, what do you mean?
Architecture reference manuals and that sort of thing, developers manuals.
So you're talking about a specific bug in the manual. Have you submitted it or something?
No, that's not a specific bug, just the documentation is not very good in the communications area. Right.
If you're talking about the documentation, yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, there's definitely some documentation. How good it is, I have absolutely no idea.
Well,
I mean, if you have specific issues, I mean, you can submit them, we can talk about it and we can figure out what we need to do to fix them.
Well,
Clearly, those are products we're
it's
going to
not a
continue.
specific issue, and actually it might be an interesting topic to throw out what anybody else thinks on it, but in regard to the communication pieces in particular, the existing documentation in terms of developer support is relatively weak, incomplete, or inaccurate. And when we got on our short list of what things can be done to help the ISVs get products out, that's rather than some futuristic development mark. It's probably actually in the near term one of the most practical things that can be done is just update the documentation and make it more complete.
Well, I know that obviously as a personal communicator company, we recognize very squarely that there's a lot to be had for better communications APIs, more complete documentation, more interfaces, more protocol call stacks. So we're in the process right now of programming various new interfaces, and again, hopefully Mike gets here. I know I keep saying that, but he's really the speaker. I'm just taking his place. I think we can be a little bit more specific, but there are some new innovations that are in the process that you're going to see coming around the bend shortly on specific technical issues where clearly we're in error in the documentation, all that. As I say, let's figure out what those are and make sure that we understand them so we can repair them specifically. Gary, it looks like you might have some information. Gary Bard, go.
By the way, let me, you guys got to come out on the hot seat. Gary Bard from Evangelism and Mark Tuberville?
Yes.
Oh, there he is. What's your title, Mark? Developer support. And hopefully they can answer some of these questions too. So go ahead, Gary.
Feel free to chime in.
Come on.
What I want to chime in with was in the next release, in the Amstel release, there's a couple things. One, the services architecture, to specifically address communications, the services architecture changes drastically in the it's rolling together in a much more consistent way with the rest of Penpoint. And we know that the documentation was practically non-existent under 101. What was there was like what you could get out of a header file or so on, and not very good. So the documentation will improve. I don't know the details of exactly what's going to change, but we know that that was a weak area, and there's much more detailed documentation on services. The second thing is that we're actually putting in some sample code to address where we knew there were holes. There's the famous counter app, which you've dealt with. Well, there's one that's counter app's been extended to deal with communication services. So there'll be better sample code there for developers to actually take a look at. That's what I wanted to add there.
Oh, is Amstel in beta yet? I'm not prepared to answer that. Mike, maybe. But Smith. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
I knew he'd show up.
Sorry, I got lost. I tried several different buildings.
So did I. I'll go over here first.
And it's my fault I gave them directions. No, it's Helen's fault. She wrote them down.
And
it's your fault.
My fault because I picked the building. Sorry.
To bring you up to date, what I've done is tried to give a little bit of an overview of what the merger is all about and something about the licensing, and then we started taking some questions on OEMs and a few other things. They may want to ask some of the same questions that my answers were a little weak on.
Yeah, instead of me going off and starting to talk, why don't you just ask questions and I'll try to answer them. So I don't.
Everybody wants.
Well, we could do it the Apple way and just scream them out. Or I could do it like a new way. They have a little Newton and they record. No, they record all the questions down, and then when they start to answer them, they lose track about the fourth, fifth question.
They're hard to
it was
answer.
kinda
You can't
interesting.
understand them anyway.
But go ahead.
I'll ask the question.
Sure.
Jerry talked a little bit about the licensing of the technology for the Hobbit, and it was noted that right now it is a proprietary system because it hasn't gone out, it hasn't been licensed. Is that what Stratton Sklelos is working on and getting new manufacturers to adopt the Hobbit and other things like
You
that?
mean that the Hobbit is a proprietary system? That's
Well,
not
Hobbit,
true. It has been licensed to NEC, Toshiba, and Matsushita, as has Penpoint, the Hobbit version. They're building products based on it right now.
When are these things expecting to come out, though?
Well, those relationships were announced at Comdex, November last year, And all of them said they would have products out in about the next 12 months. I think it'll take them a little bit longer than that, but they all have products under development. So I'm sure that it appears to you, in a sense, as a proprietary system because you haven't seen the other manufacturers' products in the marketplace, but those manufacturers have licensed Hobbit, have licensed Penpoint. They've announced that. They've announced they're building products based on the combination, and those specific products will be announced over the next 6 months. One change is that in the merger with EO, we've accelerated the licensing program such that EO will license their entire product designs in conjunction with Penpoint and the Hobbit, which will be available to manufacturers to build so that
we may see the same product by Panasonic or somebody else.
or several others, yes.
Is Amstel in beta yet? And when it does come out, will it run across the EO platform? Or will it run only on next generation hardware?
Amstel is not yet in beta.
Can you hear the question back there?
No, we don't.
The question is Amstel in beta, and will it run across the entire EO product line or just on new platforms? No, it's not yet in beta. Right now, our anticipated schedule for Amstel is that it'll be in Q1 or Q2 of next year. We'll be doing detailed developer briefings on the product when we're close enough to provide you with SDKs, probably in the last quarter of this year. In terms of it running on the entire hardware platform or set of products that EO has, it will. The current plan is to make it available on the 440 and 880 shortly after we make it available on new products that'll be implemented. Amstel will also run on the other Hobbit product designs from other manufacturers. So it'll be a single piece of code that runs across all the different platforms. That'll be a code version that runs on Hobbit. So you'll have a single code base for International and Hobbit, one single code base.
Is that a new version of Penpoint or a separate operating system?
No, it is a new version of Penpoint in the sense that it's a modification of Penpoint, a series of feature improvements.
It won't be a side-by-side product, though.
Absolutely not. You might think of it as Penpoint 3.0, just conceptually, though we may name it otherwise, but we haven't decided that yet.
Jerry's description of better efficiency with Go and EO together suggested that Go wasn't fully aware of EO's hardware. The communication wasn't good. Was that the case?
No, I think that what makes the whole thing more efficient is the opportunity to focus on a smaller number of OEM partners. With all the OEM partners that we had and the diversity of hardware platforms that they were building, we had a very difficult time focusing down our development requirements because the needs of all those customers were so different. As an example, on the one hand, in terms of the products that you know about, we had people like IBM building, tablets for vertical markets, NCR, Grid, NEC, sort of in that category. We had EO and the other Hobbit manufacturers building personal communicators, highly integrated devices that have a lot of communications capability built into them. And we had other people at AT&T building telephones, desktop telephones based on Penpoint. What that meant is that it was difficult for us to satisfy, from a product standpoint, the requirements of each of those customers. So as we narrow those down onto people that are really building what we consider personal communicator platforms, which I'd be happy to describe in more detail if you want, then we can do a lot better job in making sure that the OS features work with that basic hardware category. So that's where the efficiencies come from. It's early to have 25 different OEM platforms out there. And literally, we had 25 different platforms we were supporting in one or another stage of development prior to this merger. How many remain today? Less than 10. Some of the manufacturers, such as EO, have 3 or 4 designs underway. Other ones have 2 or 3.
So is IBM considered OEM still?
We're currently negotiating with IBM as to exactly what they're going to do. And between us, we've not yet resolved that. They have hardware designs under development that are multi-OS designs, just like the ThinkPad is, where it runs PenDOS and it runs Penpoint, and it's basically an AT architecture machine, so it could run Pen for Windows easily if they wanted it to. So they have multiple designs like that underway, and they could run Penpoint on those if they decide that they want to, and if we decide it's a reasonable business relationship, to support them. The issue with some of the large OEMs, frankly, is it takes a tremendous amount of our resource in order to do a good job on their products. And in cases where we're one of 3 or 4 operating system alternatives, that really hasn't paid out for us or for customers. So we won't do that at all in the future. I can't say IBM because, as we speak, we're literally negotiating with them for what they do. If I had my druthers, they'd build a Hobbit platform, but, there's probably a lot of issues around that.
What happened to the early concept, though, the object-oriented operating system where you could take one mill, change the mill, put it on a different platform? Why isn't that still going to apply with Amstel for a variety of processors?
Amstel is actually better than any prior version of Penpoint in terms of its hardware independence. But the issue with that turns out to be the diversity of the hardware devices in addition to the processor that make up any individual product design, like an IBM ThinkPad or a NEC VersaPad or whatever. So one way to think about it is to kind of apply your knowledge of the PC industry. The way that the PC hardware software standard was created is, back in '82, IBM and Microsoft built a highly integrated product. As it increased in volume, the business opportunity became such that other hardware manufacturers built clones. Clones basically mimicked all of the functions right down to addresses of the IBM hardware product. So there was literally no software modification that Microsoft did to make the OS run on them. And the economics are such that there are great opportunities for the clones to do, to spend money on incremental software engineering to make those things exactly clone replicas, which is a difficult thing to do.
And that expanded the market for the ISVs.
It did, but that really, our memory kind of tends to compress time. That didn't happen in year 1 of, the original PC. In fact, clones didn't even really arrive on the scene until pretty much, 2 to 4 years after the original PC came out, when volumes were, between 500,000 and 1 million units. So the strategy for Penpoint in development of it has been to build something that is truly hardware independent through isolating hardware dependencies through the mill. Right now, the economics are not sufficient enough in terms of volume to support, 25 different products there. So instead what has to happen is you have to have a small number of products at first, because the incremental engineering to do each one is, reasonably significant, even though the system's hardware independent. And then over time, as the volume grows, you can support a lot more variation. And the hardware manufacturers will do more work in order to accommodate the software architecture. We are just too broad, too early in this process. So what we're doing is we're narrowing ourselves down and trying to build up the volume for the platform that way. Yeah.
I'm a little perplexed with the analogy you drew with Microsoft, because Microsoft does not make chips. Microsoft does not sell hardware, they sell software. So now we have one company that's selling chips and selling the hardware and making software, and then trying to go out and get other companies to buy chips and buy operating systems and compete. When Go spun EO out, the reason it's given was because they wouldn't be able to track OEMs as long as they were making their own hardware. What has changed now to make other OEMs interested in porting Penpoint to their boxes when they're going to be competing with the same company that owns the OS and the chips?
Early on in the process, actually, another good example of this business model is Apple. with the Newton. Apple, for instance, makes the Newton operating system and hardware. They don't actually manufacture the ARM processor itself, but they do develop ASICs that they license to Motorola and to Sharp. And Sharp builds a product that's identical to the Newton, except for its appearance, really, its label. Early on in the very early phases of the market, there's a lot of advantage to doing that, because if those products are actually coming off the same manufacturing line and are of the same exact design, then both parties benefit from really significant cost economies of scale. Over time, as you reach volume thresholds like 200,000 and 300,000 units, then it makes sense to, the architecture gains enough momentum so that it makes sense for another manufacturer to be supported. So the incentive for the OEM at first is that if you take one OEM that's doing, 50 or 100,000 units, and another OEM that's doing 50 or 100,000 units, you can, by manufacturing those products together, reduce their cost significantly, which benefits both OEMs. In any volumes that kind of range from 0 to 50,000 units, no matter how good a manufacturer they are, the overhead is such that the costs of the individual units are very high.
So are the companies that are going to be producing Hobbit-based machines going to in fact be private labeling EOS or something like that?
The strategy of licensing the Loki platform itself is to get them to take the Loki platform, or it's the next generation platform, and to license that lock, stock, and barrel, and in many cases take it right off the same manufacturing line. In the case of Apple, there's really only two OEMs that are doing that. Well, there's Apple and then the OEM Sharp. They're coming off the same line. Potentially Motorola is doing something very, very similar, although it's not clear yet to us whether they're actually coming off the same manufacturing line. That'll also be the case with the Hobbit products, where a couple of the OEMs are producing products from the same manufacturing line that are virtually identical, and therefore, what you call private label. And there may be, one or two other OEMs that have hardware variations in their design.
So the model is not the Microsoft model where you had a lot of companies producing PCs. The market model is actually the Newton model.
Well, the market model, at first, Microsoft did not have a lot of companies producing PCs. They only had one, which was IBM. Once they achieved a critical mass of volume, other companies jumped into the fray. Our strategy is to do that same basic thing, only to bring partners in right up front, producing identical hardware and slight hardware variations. Where we are different from the Newton model is that because Penpoint is quite hardware independent and has been ported to different hardware architecture, Intel and Hobbit is the practical case example, we will have some hardware variations amongst the OEMs. So it's not literally just like Apple, but it's a lot more focused than we had originally intended. And over time, the hardware platforms will start to diverge.
I'm afraid my last question, Paul. I'm afraid I still don't see why an OEM would want to compete with the same company that makes the chips and owns the operating system. Have you made them some guarantees that EO will not get an inside advantage over them?
Well, sure. I mean, it's very important that they're on equal footing. That's one. The second is that although AT&T is one company, it functions as a large number, more than 20 independent business units. So, and these business units are things on the order of 500 million to $10 billion in scale. They function just like different companies. So one of the key things that we haven't really come out with yet and described very openly, because we haven't worked out all the details, though we're far along that, is how we'll keep the operating system, microprocessor, and other platform components that are licensed on an equal footing to the EO hardware device company and to our OEM customers. But that absolutely is a necessity for those OEM customers to do business with us. We're doing that at the level of the OEMs now. We haven't describe any sort of broad-based strategy to do that, such as separate licensing companies or separate divisions of AT&T or whatever. But we basically work that way in a sense that, you know, Go is a separate entity, and although it's a division of AT&T or EO, it still functions in its relationships with ISVs and OEMs quite separately. Get some new blood in the program here.
My question actually is back to hardware. Who's going to do color first? Because that's who I want to develop for. I think that, from my point of view, looking at, do I want to be a Newton developer? Do I want to be an EO, Penpoint, whatever you want to call it, developer? I want to develop on whoever's going to do color first. So, you know, how do you see color affecting the market? I know I went to the SEF and listened to Jerry say he didn't think that was a big piece of the market. And I totally disagree. I think color is key to this market.
You know, the whole issue around color is really simply cost. Cost primarily and battery consumption secondarily. So to the extent the OEMs are willing to maintain their current price points and increase the functionality of their machines, let's say, you know, a great candidate would be NEC, right?
That's a given. You know, kind of grown up in the workstation business. I mean, I saw Sun 1s at 25K, and a few years later it was still 25K, and you got 3 times the performance. So again, at a Newton price point of 1,000 a day, or an EO of 3K, you know, in 3 years, am I going to get color in both of those markets?
Probably, sure. You know, if you grew up in the Sun market, you know that the whole strategy was, you know, the monochrome single-headed workstation with no slots was $49.99, and the standalone 200 meg disc 4 years ago with a faster processor and a big color display was $15,000. Exactly the same thing will happen in this market. Although currently, I think, most of the manufacturers' top priorities are to cost reduce their products and to make them smaller. So instead of, you know, taking people that have tablets today and, like in the Sun product line, moving them forward, increasing the functionality at the same price point, and bringing them down, we see a lot of focus on the part of the manufacturers to bring them down first, as opposed to investing a lot of R&D dollars and staying up at the top end. I think, you know, you're ahead of the market in your thinking, which I think is going to happen, which is that, you know, they'll do a low-end product, they'll realize its limitations, or to some degree Newton will teach them that, and then they'll realize there's a lot of value to the more functional products.
Well, yeah, everything we're seeing now is kind of like 128K max anyway.
Right.
But the real question is, how do you get there, and how quick do you get there?
Well, yeah, I think 3 years is, you know, pretty easy to estimate that that'll be the case. I don't think there's any question. In terms of who the vendor will be that'll do it, probably the first vendors will do it will be the ones that have their own vertical integration and build their own color displays. Good example, good candidate of that, no different than the notebook market would be Toshiba, for instance. Toshiba is ahead of almost everybody in color displays right now. Sharp has really good color display technology. Those are some candidates. Not clear when they'll put those things into, you know, pen-based products.
Is communicator direction going to be more than an organizer, more than a cell phone, more or less than a laptop?
I would say, you know, put that way, it's more than an organizer and more than a cell phone from a strategy standpoint. The primary reason is that we really want to make the products very easy to use to begin with, and then try to provide the customer with a smooth growth path from there. Although I think what we're really talking about is a new product category that people haven't seen before, so describing it sort of as a step from what we have kind of compromises it. Nobody has seen yet a highly integrated next generation cell phone product. You know, there's no product today anywhere in the world that has an integrated cell phone and has, you know, a microprocessor based pen-based unit. The EO440 is kind of a very first attempt at that, and it's all loosely integrated. The next products will take the stuff that's in the EO440, shove them into the same design in a highly integrated you know, elegant way and much better integrate the software functionality. A great example, just in terms of how you think about it. Today, people think of their address book, you know, as a key function of their organizer, you know, electronic organizer. The truth is, the most valuable use of that address book to you turns out to be communications. You just don't usually use it that way. The good news about electronic organizers is that the thing can be there with you all the time, so it can collect information all the time. But if you want to use that organizer to make a phone call, you need 2 different devices. Or if you wanted to use it to send an email, you often have your address information in your paper or handheld organizer, and you've got your laptop that sends the email. That address book database should be thought of in a lot more functional ways as a phone book and a fax book and an email book, because that's really what you use that stuff for. The software functionality should support that in a big way. So that's why we think of them as kind of a leap from an organizer or a cell phone first, as opposed to a laptop. A laptop has generally very poorly integrated communications features. They're usually add-ons from, you know, what's basically a desktop world or a desktop architecture.
You've, just to take you back a little bit in this thing, that when Penpoint started out, it was going to be aiming towards communications, but actually was also going to be solving some vertical market questions. How do you see EO taking forward with Amstel and getting into this sort of downsizing, but how that is going to address those vertical market applications?
The primary feature, I think, that's necessary for a vertical market application that's incremental to a horizontal one is the ability to customize the product rapidly. And the reason I say incremental is that most vertical market applications actually need productivity functions, communication functions, and the same things that horizontal applications do, but then they have an incremental set of customized applications. The key attribute or characteristic of Penpoint we can improve is how fast you customize it for vertical markets. And since it's an object-oriented architecture, it sort of inherently could be good at that. However, we haven't done a very good job, frankly, at high-level development tools in order to expose all the benefits of the architecture. That's one area where we have a significant amount of focus going on. So the software architecture itself will improve in terms of the tools that will give people to build vertical market applications. High-level, graphical-oriented, script-based, object-oriented tools to allow you to customize it rapidly for vertical markets. The packaging of the product, meaning the hardware that it gets delivered on, the software gets delivered on, in many cases will need to be a larger product than a handheld for vertical market applications. EOS, at least, actually all the OEMs' product plans so far include a range of hardware products. Although there's a lot of excitement about the handheld category because it's so new, I don't know of a single OEM that's just doing a product in that category. They're all doing product families that include larger tablets.
So within the range of, I know there's been some discussion on conference about the ruggedness and things of the EO range. That is being addressed by the OEMs in licensing the technology.
I'm not so sure about how well ruggedness is being addressed. You know, I think that they need to see the market opportunity in terms of unit volumes before they really do a special product. Some of the products are definitely more rugged than others, but I wouldn't say that there's anyone I know of that's doing a, you know, case hardened or, you know, oh God, what do you call the government? Mil-spec, you know, mil-spec Penpoint machine. We're not there yet. We didn't have a mil-spec Mac at Apple until 1989 or 90. One of the groups I managed here was technical support for the government group, and it took a long, long time before that made economic sense for anybody to do, just because of unit volumes.
So does that imply that the form factor of polymer line, the EAD, is going to be supported for quite some time?
I don't know if it'll exactly be the 880 form factor itself, although there's definitely a you know, plan in many of the OEM's product lines. I can't speak about their specific product plans, but in many of the OEM product lines for a small, medium, and large product, you know. Sort of in the three categories that you see with the EO. Although some of them are, you know, in between, and you know, there's a lot of variations on the theme. Nobody that I know of is building just a handheld. They're not thinking about it that way. They're excited about the handheld because it opens a new market, but they're building product families.
You mentioned the Loki. Do you know when you're going to be able to show that to developers?
No, I shouldn't have mentioned it, but to be honest, because it's an unannounced product. But you know, suffice to say, it's a next generation product that will be smaller, lighter, more highly integrated, a lot less expensive, and so on.
Will it be any less functional than a 440?
Nope. More so.
But you can't comment on when we might be able to see it.
Not right now.
You said Amstel will be Q1 or Q2. Will be running on this new generation product?
Yeah, and current hardware, and the SDK, you know, as well, PC desktop machines for development purposes. That's where you guys will see it first, actually. You know, developer versions of the SDK for Amstel will be available probably in Q4 of this year. Yeah.
If I hear what you're saying properly, I hear basically three different products. I hear there's a handheld unit or
Make sure you speak up for the background.
Okay, if I understand what you're saying properly, I basically see three different products, and I'm wondering which of the products you guys are focusing on. And the three products the way I divide it up would be the handheld product, the laptop or notebook product with or without keyboard, and then the notebook product with heavy communications. And I'm curious if you're focusing on one or the other. It's a little the message you're saying confuses me a little, because on the one hand, you seem to be wanting volume, which to me would mean you'd be focusing on the handheld because it's small and inexpensive, or you'd be focusing on the laptop notebook because that's what everybody's familiar with. But then on the other hand, you're also touting communications and the personal communicator, which to me sounds like you want this heavy-duty unit with all these whiz-bang features that people are only beginning to use or learn how to use, and that sounds like the more expensive product. That seems to conflict with the volume message. And I'm wondering,
let me draw an analogy.
How would you resolve that, and which of those products are you focusing on?
Let me draw an analogy, since Sun workstations range anywhere, they're less now, from $49.99 for a stripped-down version to, you know, $19.99 for or a lot more than that actually, but in terms of the mainstream of the product line, for a, you know, fairly well-equipped version. Size of the displays varies, number of slots, amount of storage, communications capability, all that varies. Every one of them has Ethernet. Every one of them has NFS built in. Every one is inherently a network machine. The Apple Macintosh product family ranges from a $999 Classic up to a, you know, more than $8,000 Quadra 950. And so all I'm saying is that we're focused on a product family that will range from a small handheld device on up to a tablet device. It might be a subtle distinction, but I wouldn't call it a notebook. I'd call it a tablet that has a larger screen and more storage, basically. And perhaps, you know, a faster processor. So we're not focused on the low-cost one or the tablet. We think it's quite viable to build a software architecture that spans that range of products, and to do a good job in all of the products at integrating fax, email, voice communications, and you know, does all those things over a wireless, one or another kind of wireless communications.
But as soon as you say wireless, doesn't that mean cellular, and doesn't that chalk on another? So what is that, infrared?
Wireless can mean cellular if you're talking about wide area wireless. You know, if you kind of look at what cellular costs today, what's the least expensive cellular telephone you can go out and buy? $99. Part of the
99 cents, actually. Yes,
What's really
it was.
99 cents.
So what, it's subsidized?
Yeah, it's all subsidized.
So,
Give the phone away.
So it's
You get one free in the UK with 2 power sheets.
the subsidy comes from the wireless. subsidy comes from the wireless carrier, right? There's a well, accepted way in the industry for the wireless carrier to reimburse the reseller. The average cost of a cellular phone to a dealer last year was about $240. The average rebate to a dealer was actually about $200 across the nation. That's why you see 99-cent cellular phones. If things are structured right and cellular is the wireless communications vehicle you decide to put into these, because there's others you can use for wide area, then you can actually have that product feature at little or no extra cost to the customer. So the cost of cellular over the next couple of years for using data will come down dramatically. Because even over analog cellular now with high-speed error-correcting modems, you can do reasonable data transmission. But as CDPD comes online for an incremental $30 in cost, you can have a cellular capable or a CDPD cellular phone, and that can become integrated in these products. Today, you do have that integrated in the 440. It's the only viable machine that can do cellular communications for data in a reasonably well integrated way. Over time, that'll just get lower cost and more highly integrated.
This, I'm sorry, does CDPD support fax as well, or is that data real time?
No, CDPD is basically open communications channel at 19.2, so you can send whatever kind of data you want over it, and that could be fax or it could be email or file transfer or whatever. The best analogy is today on the 440, you can actually do any kind of the data communication, including fax or email or whatever, over the cellular. You just switch from wireline to cellular, and because of the error-correcting modem, it actually handles or overcomes some of the inefficiencies of analog cellular transmission.
I just thought fax was a problem in that in CDPD because of the handshake being.
I don't think so. Now, CDPD is new, so I mean, part of the issue will be once it's deployed, broadly by middle of '94. I'm sure we'll find some places where practicality doesn't meet theoretical, capabilities. But, that doesn't mean we're not going to do it and push forward with it. How about a new person?
What do you see for new battery technologies? Do you expect them to come? Weight, duration?
I'm not much of an expert on battery technologies themselves, although on the software side, although in general I know that they're not improving dramatically. Sort of the difference between NiCad and nickel metal hydride is roughly 30% in terms of power to weight. In other words, the same battery in the nickel metal hydride technology will roughly give you 30% more power at the same basic weight, or the same power at 30% less weight, roughly. The much bigger issues actually are not in the battery technology themselves. They're in the intelligence of the software and its ability to turn on and turn off devices as it works. And when you integrate high-speed communications into that equation, that actually becomes a significant part of the power requirement of the system. On a laptop that's not doing communications, it'll be the display and the hard disk. The display, by far, the backlighting, the biggest consumer of power. When you're doing high-speed communications, while it's being done, then that'll become one of the biggest consumers of power. If you're doing it with a cellular phone, then that'll sort of eclipse everything else as a consumer of power. So the issue is really more one of how well does the software work with the hardware in order to minimize the power consumption. And we're working really hard on that problem. That is one area where we'll see great benefits of focusing down on the hardware platforms we support, because we can implement much better power management by focusing on more specific hardware platforms.
I asked this question before you were here, but based on the emphasis you've put on it, let me draw a conclusion and see if you'll agree with it. If I were focusing down on the hardware platforms, that would certainly mean that I would not be supporting the x86 architectures. Do you agree?
We will support the x86 architecture to some degree. The question is, to what degree? For sure, we'll provide Penpoint on a desktop PC in an SDK version on an Intel-based machine. We're now negotiating with each of the hardware manufacturers to decide whether they want us to continue to support Penpoint on their x86 platform. It turns out that if you really kind of think about it, and we've had the opportunity to do it because we're working with the hardware manufacturers, by the time the next generation comes out of Penpoint, you know, say 6 to 12 months, you know, those hardware platforms that are on the market now will have been replaced by subsequent products. Hardware life cycles in this space are generally 12 months or less. So the real question is, how much work are they willing to do, and how much work are we willing to do in order to accommodate new Intel hardware platforms? The one thing I can say is that it is unlikely that we'll support many, if any, new Intel tablet platforms. The reason is we really want to focus down the number of platforms. We want to focus on Hobbit primarily because we think we can do a better job on the Hobbit and that component suite. And we are now, you know, finalizing negotiations with each of the hardware manufacturers. If I had to make a bet right now, I don't think you'd see virtually any Intel tablets supported with the next generation of Penpoint by agreement with those hardware manufacturers.
Let me follow up just quickly. What does that mean then for the developer? Does that mean that we'll be developing on the Crick Hollows? Is that what we have to buy now, or are we going to have a tablet, download to the tablets, or you know, what do you do then? Because it will be difficult to assure that what you see on your x86 screen is going to be what you see on the Hobbit system.
Yeah. Today, you can use the EO development kit in order to develop on the Penpoint machine and debug on the EO machine. That's a little bit or a lot clumsy, depending on how you feel about it. The Crick Hollow is not a suitable long-term solution at all. It's kind of silly, to be honest, but it was what we had to do to start with. We are working really hard to improve the ability to develop and debug on the combination of an x86 desktop machine and a Hobbit-based tablet. And you'll see us do all of our development tools work in that cross-development environment. Our goal is to improve that capability by a lot, even with the first release of the next generation of Penpoint in the SDK version.
At the first WPDO meeting in July of last year, some of us were told by Go's director of developer relations, I think it was, that improving the development environment was Go's highest priority. In the year and a quarter since then, absolutely nothing has been done. And you've got credibility that's somewhere below the basement of this building at this point. What are you going to do to improve the development environment? Which is so bad that I know a number of developers who have simply quit developing for Penpoint because they can't get their code to run. And an improved debugger ain't going to cut it. What are we going to see? When are we going to see it?
That's a pretty hard question to answer the way you asked it, but it's sort of, since I have zero credibility, I probably shouldn't even answer it, right? But it's not the case that nothing has been done. We have had a team of people working on it for more than a year. It just turns out that it's taken us longer than we anticipated to get improved developer tools done. We actually had a development program in place for integrated development environment, native Penpoint development environment, for about the last year or so inside of Go. The thinking there was that we could do a highly integrated environment so that graphical layout, class browser, debugging, compiling, editing, all could happen with very fast turnaround time, just like all the best development environments have. We also had some work being done at EO on high-level scripting languages and graphical development, more focused at the vertical developer. We're now in the process of pulling those two projects together, and you'll see the first fruits of them with the first release of the next generation, meaning, you know, the Amstel SDK, if you will.
So will you be talking about them in the fourth quarter of this year?
Yeah, yes, definitely. I'm pretty confident that by the first or second quarter of next year, we'll offer a full-blown high-level development environment with a scripting language for Penpoint. That'll be, you know, competitive with anything out there in the marketplace. I can't give you the details of that right now, but certainly in the fourth quarter of the year I will. We absolutely recognize the challenges in developing Penpoint. I mean, a lot of people that go do it. So, you know, while the challenges of the app developer are quite different than the system developer, we do have a lot of app developers even inside of Go, and a big focus for us has been improving the tools. It's just taken us a lot longer than we thought it would. So that's the best I can answer that question.
And that brings up the second half of this two-part question. Before you got here, Gary said that improving the documentation was a high priority on Amstel. I spoke with one of the documentation writers who was no longer at Go. He said that as part of the layoff, half the documentation team was laid off. It seems difficult to balance those two together. How are you going to improve the doc set and lay off documentation writers?
A few more highly productive doc writers, maybe? I don't know. No. Sorry. There are actually three kinds of documentation, or four, that we did at Go prior to the layoff. Developer documentation, which is, you know, the stuff you guys know, the app writing guide, the reference manuals, the tools manual, and so forth. OEM documentation, end user documentation, and international versions of all that stuff, which was quite expensive. We have reduced the documentation group substantially and laid some of those people off, but we've only laid off one of the developer documentation people, I think, at most one, if not zero. So we haven't cut down the work that we do in developer doc. We have cut down the work we do in OEM documentation and in the various versions of our OEM, or end user documentation, which is taken by OEMs and then, you know, modified to their liking. Part of the way we can do that is by substantially reducing the number of OEMs. We also had an in-house production group that was 4 people, which is pretty unusual for a company of our size. Most companies do documentation production outside, or go straight from, you know, editing and writing to production for technical documentation. That's what we're now doing, and we're doing our production outside, or primarily outside. So I frankly don't think you're going to see any difference in developer documentation in terms of it getting worse. I hope that we can make it better. We are in the process of restructuring the developer documentation based on a lot of feedback that we've gotten to include more graphics and to be organized in a way that's more useful. So actually I think we're improving it. We have about the same amount of resource on as we did before.
When can I buy the SDK for $99?
The current price of the SDK, I think, the SDK itself is $99. The compiler, what?
Well, he said it, so just mention the WPDO when you order something.
Right? What?
Okay.
It is $99.
Is it?
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It has been for a while.
I got a fax from Go a while back, and it says about $1,500.
Yeah, there's an old price
the
list.
full package.
Oh, well, that, yeah, you should get the new price list. In fact, we have a special deal with WPDO that's, you know, Whoopie-doo. I used to call it Whoopie-doo at Go, and people didn't like it as much, so I changed.
WPDO, I guess.
Anyway,
Okay,
so Whoopie-doo, and so it's $99 now.
Okay.
In terms of, you know, the real issue, I think, is equipping you with all the stuff you need to do Hobbit development, right? Because that's what you need.
Sure.
That includes the SDK, that includes the MetaWare compiler, that includes the Hobbit machine. So, you know, as you know, we don't produce the MetaWare compiler. We're trying to get the cost of that down from them, but we are selling it to you virtually at cost to keep the price down. And we would like to do something to bring the price of the hardware down for developers. Now, some of you probably know, I don't know how many of you know, that yesterday EO decreased its prices by about 40% on all the Hobbit products. So as one example, the 8 meg RAM, 8 meg ROM version with a high-speed modem of the 440 is now priced at $19.99, and as a developer you can get that product for about 20% off that. We're even pushing to, you know, give developers bigger price cuts as, you know, an incentive to move over from Intel to Hobbit. We had that discussion to EO executive staff just at 5 o'clock today, and we're trying to get a final proposal together to do that. I can't promise it, but I'm certainly a big advocate of it, and we'll try to do that.
It's actually, it's a pretty good deal. The price I read on CompuServe for the 8 meg, 20 meg hard drive version for developers, I think, is $2,069 or something like that.
With the new prices?
With the new prices, really quite a good price. Yeah. I actually said something else.
That was good.
Do you plan to offer discounts in the educational market to students like Apple and IBM do?
So far, we haven't really had the sales coverage, you know, in terms of resellers or direct salespeople to go call on university accounts. Apple's business really, you know, I came from Apple, so I'm pretty familiar with their education business. Breaks into university and K-12, which are quite different. K-12 is a lot like government. It's institutional buying. They're deployed in classrooms or labs, and so that's mostly not appropriate for these kind of products right now. Higher education, probably a good idea. We haven't yet got to many of the higher ed campuses or bookstores. I think that's something that we'll get to next year probably, and you know, we'll put educational programs together. Our top priority is business and the resellers that service it, though.
Can you let us know how many EOs have shipped this year?
Question is, can you let us know how many EOs have shipped? Answer is no.
Why has been a secret? I've always wondered that.
Every hardware company I'm familiar with never discloses their own internal shipment estimates. And the reason is that, well, there's a whole bunch of reasons for it. As a private company, you know, which EO is, we don't disclose any aspect of our financials. When I was at Apple, we never disclosed unit shipments. If somebody asked us, we'd say, you know, well, I can tell you that InfoCorp says, you know. At this stage of the market, though, we're just not going to provide any of our internal financial data because as a private company, there's no benefit to doing that.
As a software developer, I don't know how many units could I sell today when I have no idea. And it's sort of frustrating not to have any idea how, you know, how soon I could actually start selling product in any kind of volume.
Part of the issue is that if we, you know, in a new market like this, your predictions are probably as good as ours, frankly. And so if we're to make predictions that we're overly optimistic that you bet your business on, then, you know, you'd probably be really disappointed in us. And since these, well, but to be honest, for me to stand up here with any degree of certainty and tell you what the, you know, unit shipments are in this market would be highly misleading. And, you know, Apple, for instance, was quoting 250 to 300,000 newtons a year, and they will be highly misleading developers at those numbers, I can guarantee that. We're not going to get into that trap because it's not a good business practice. We just can't predict it with great certainty. After we've had a year or two of history to base it on, yeah, then we might do it. But to tell you right now it's going to be 100 or 2 or 3, you know, would be really betting on the come. And you know, John Scully can do that, but I don't have a job like that yet, so I can't pop off like that.
How about just a few more questions and then we'll break off. So,
new person.
How many vendors are going to be coming out with, say, EO machines in, say, Qualcomm decks?
Question is how many vendors will be coming out with EO-like machines at Fall Comdex. I don't know exactly how many will announce them there. The vendors that have announced that they're building Hobbit machines are EO, of course, other AT&T divisions, GBCS, the one that makes telephones, Matsushita, Toshiba, and NEC. I don't know which of them will announce their products at Comdex. Though at last Comdex, they all claim they would be shipping within about 12 months, which is next Comdex. I just can't give you their shipment information.
Why, I'm just curious, why is there a price, sudden price reduction? I was in competition for existing things such as Mac PowerBooks or?
The question is, why is there a price reduction? The answer is we would like to drive unit volumes as high as we can so we can provide a business opportunity for developers. Now that AT&T owns 51% of Go, we don't necessarily have to run things exactly like venture capital funded startup would. Namely, we can afford to sell products at lower margins in order to build a market for the long term. So we've reduced the price to drive volumes up, and we think that that'll help create opportunities for developers.
If you have to guess, 1 year from today, what will be the price of the 440 or the 880?
If I had to guess, what would be the price of 440 or 880? Watching microcomputer products for quite some time, you've usually seen that year to year, depends on the year, but last 2 years, average price decreases have been between 25 and 30%. The price decrease we just made for the 440 was 40% decrease. I would say it's probably reasonable to estimate a 25 to 40% reduction on any manufacturer's product in this category in the next 12 months. That's not announcing EO's pricing plans at all. I'm just sort of giving you the observation of what manufacturers have done. In lower priced products, such as the Newton or the Zoomer, where they're already, selling at or below cost, I don't think the price reductions will be nearly as steep. They can only afford to lose so much money on each unit.
How much is the 80 now?
I don't know off the top of my head which configuration's what, but I think that the 880 8 meg, 8 meg ROM, 8 meg RAM with the modem is about $26.99 or so. Yeah.
So is the plan to maintain the same price points and improve, capabilities, or to, reduce the price as time goes on?
Well, I mean, the example is that, we'll introduce lower priced products, much lower priced products, and we'll improve the products that are in the product line now.
So you'll increase the number of items in the product line?
Not necessarily. Everybody in their product lines does, anything from new products to fill out, a segment such as handhelds that, are not in the product line now, and product, iterations that improve the products that they have in kind of virtually the same same form factor, and then different configuration usually influences a lot, where the price of the exact products are. Products with a lot of expandability, like the 440, you can put a hard disk in it, 12 megs of memory, a high-speed modem. The lowest price 440 ranges, from $14.99 to the highest price 440, which is probably easily $29.99. All that's commodity stuff inside, mostly. So we'll just continue to iterate on those products. One of the things we'll do is we'll integrate communications better and better in every new generation of product.
And where do you plan to sell these? Do you plan to have only, say, AT&T phone center sell them, or do you plan to sell them through, say, mail order businesses and so on?
Today, EO's products are sold through the AT&T phone set, the current products, the phone centers, through about 200 or 300 local computer and cellular dealers, through CompUSA, and through the Delaware catalog for direct mail order. I expect that we'll continue with all those distribution points in next generation products. We may expand to include broader consumer electronics light distribution as well.
So if I want to become a distributor, would that be a possibility, or are you targeting only big chains?
if you're a VAR, if what you mean is kind of a value-added distributor, then sure. But we're not just targeting big chains. We sell through rep firms to independent dealers. We sell through Ingram or Miracell. I forget which one, 2 VARs. Through both. So you could contact someone in EO, customer service, or Spike Bloom's VP of Sales, if you're interested in distributing the products.
So, 2 more questions. What are you saying? Then we'll break. Some of us, yeah.
Let me ask the available market question a little bit different way, looking forward. As the head of a software company where virtually everyone came out of Intel and 86 through 36 SL, et cetera, platform establishment, we really like the strategy of integrating the hardware and the software. We don't care about supporting all the other chips that are out there, but you got to have something that's a solid, OEMable platform, because you don't have 100 field application engineers to go out and get all the OEM designs for you. We like that, but our concern is, in the near term, the next 6 to 9 months, how much of your bandwidth, in terms of people, resources, and money, is going to go into tactical work, marketing with 440 and 880, versus strategic work, trying to get low-peak designs seated. This is something I would expect you to give an indirect answer on, but understand we have to figure out how to strategize what we're going to do. Is it 30% tactical and 70% strategic?
I'll give you a rough breakdown of the people at EO, the combined company, and you can judge that way. The operating system groups combined between the 2 companies are about 120 people. The platform group, which is a group solely responsible for OEM, ISV support, and marketing, is about 40 people. The EO Marketing Communications Group, the marketing group, including its marketing communications function, is probably 6 or 7 people. And the EO Sales Group is probably about 10 people. So that 40-person, there's also hardware design, manufacturing, I left those out, but that 40-person group is strictly dedicated to promoting the platform to OEMs and ISVs and supporting those customers. It is a very, very significant amount of resource. So I think that, we've got a lot of emphasis in that area.
Good. It's really important because you need that to get the feedback to tune Loki as you get closer to it.
We have not reduced the number of resources at Go that we have supporting the OEMs or the ISVs. We've combined them from Go and EO. So in our ISV tech support, for instance, we have an additional person. We have the same people we had at Go and an additional person from EO. Same is true in evangelism. The same is true in OEM technical support. We have reduced our number of OEM salespeople because we have fewer OEMs to deal with, but that's really the only thing in that category we reduced at all. The others have basically been increased.
I have another strategy question that I'm kind of wondering how you see things working. It seems like with your basically non-Intel strategy, you're bucking one of the most major trends in the industry, which is nobody has been able to compete with the volume economics of the Intel platform. You see Apple finally, shipping software for the Intel platform.
They canceled that project, but...
Okay, I didn't hear that. And Solaris is doing, Next is buckled under and says, to hell with it, we'll start with Intel. Even though it's slow, the market demands an Intel platform. And I know personally what I wanted to do was get a ThinkPad, one of the new ThinkPads, the 750 with convertible screen. I was like, I can get that, I can use it for whatever I want, and I can use it for Penpoint. And what you guys are doing with the non-Intel strategy is you're saying, if you want to try Penpoint, not only can you not buy software and run it on the machine you have now, but you have to go out and buy this dedicated hardware. And that's exactly what people have, that seems to be what the trend away from, because apparently the market's not willing to buy hardware just to try an operating system which isn't proven. How do you think you're going to break that trend? Or
well, historically, what you say is absolutely true in the desktop market. The volume economics of the Intel architecture are really compelling. The Intel architecture, though, has been designed and continues to evolve primarily for the desktop market. For instance, the Pentium, has over 3 million transistors in it. It's extremely difficult to satisfy that design space at the same time as you satisfy the handheld or mobile design space well, because the requirements for the microprocessor and other supporting hardware are very, very different. In the low power mobile category, Intel has not yet announced their products, but they made an investment in VLSI technology to try and take the 386 and 46 and build low-cost, low-power chips from them, chipsets. We know a lot about those chipsets. We were fully disclosed on them and, did a lot of design, as you can imagine, with Intel on those products. My own personal take is that microprocessors and chipsets designed specifically for the low-power mobile market are far, far better in price, performance, and overall functionality than the Intel products. And the way that will be seen in the market is, by the products that are produced with them.
Could you answer the marketing side of that? Because I wasn't really asking it technologically. There's a lot of superior products out there that have buckled under to this Intel trend. And what I'm asking is basically, how do you expect to buck the trend that people want to use the equipment they already have to test new stuff before it's proven, as opposed and not going out to buy something which they're not sure is going to work for them?
If people want to use the equipment they already have to test stuff, then it means they either want to use their desktop computer or their notebook computer, or a very small number of tablet computers.
Or they want to buy something that's dual purpose.
Right. The sacrifice for that is that those products will be not nearly as good products from a whole variety of aspects. And I'll take a counter example. Well, I'll take a perfect example, which is the 880 or the 440. There is no product on the marketplace that's Intel based that offers the price, performance, and communications capability of the 440. Not even close.
But is that what people are buying their products on? I want a keyboard. That doesn't have a keyboard. There are a lot of people who want to start where they are today and migrate.
If you want to start today with a notebook product, you should use some operating system other than Penpoint, frankly. Because Penpoint is not and will not be designed in the future to be optimized for a notebook computer that has a keyboard. It requires too many trade-offs in the user interface. It doesn't support the integrated voice communications that we need, and those absolutely will be the case with future Hobbit and DSP-based products. So to be honest, if what you'd like to build is a notebook computer or notebook computer software, you really shouldn't use Penpoint. If you want to build a new category of software for a highly integrated communications product, then Penpoint is optimized for that. You can't be both. We found that out by trying to be both. Since we have a great opportunity with AT&T to offer the microprocessor, the DSPs with Bell Labs technology, Penpoint, McCaw's cellular communications, AT&T's long distance services, and AT&T's information and voice services, we think that we can provide a much more compelling product offering. That's our product strategy.
Well, you just said that what you just said throws out the product line that you answered my previous question. You said you were trying to build an entire product line.
Sure.
What you just told me is that you refuse to support a keyboard.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, you do know the 440 supports a keyboard, right?
One other thing, because we got a break, but it's just a different segment. Period.
That's the problem. What I'm saying,
you got to focus on segment.
What I'm saying is you need to build a bridge from where people are today to get to where you want to bring them.
Which brings up a question. I mean, if you're not going to support the keyboard, at least give us some really neat software for integration to the desktop. Because right now, you can get a Windows product and a Mac product that'll link you up and share data right away. Where is the equivalent product for the EO?
A couple of product facts. One, this supports an AT keyboard today, as do all the products I know of.
but I'm not going to carry around an AT keyboard. I want it as part of the unit.
Okay,
seriously.
Buy a notebook computer. Sorry, but a notebook computer is for a different thing. You know, just like Walkman's a lot different than a 21-inch color TV console.
There's one of those compact keyboards too, but it's only like this big and you can get.
But I'm not arguing with your need for the product. All I'm saying is our product strategy is to build highly integrated products optimized for the pen and communications. And I think it's great that you want a keyboard-based product, and this accommodates it. If you want to run Windows software or existing desktop software, that's not what you buy Penpoint for. On the communication side, you're absolutely right. Most of my technical background's in communications. I've bought the Newman Developer Kit, or Connection Kit. I've used it. It's in 0.9 beta version for Mac. It is not available for Windows. It does not support any application on the Mac desktop other than the one that they provide for you. We have under development a desktop synchronization product for the next generation for both Windows and Macintosh that will provide file and record level synchronization with a variety of popular PIM and database products. That'll be available with Amstel, and I think you'll be surprised at how good the integration is. A fundamental difference in our approach has been, though, what Apple did with the Connection Kit is they provided you with parallel applications in the Connection Kit to the ones you get in Newton. If you use a different personal information manager or database, those applications are in no way compatible. What we're doing is fitting in better with what's already there, which is the existing desktop applications you have that are PIMs or databases. And we've actually defined a format for developers that is an interchange format for PIM information. And we've worked with desktop developers to provide record and file level synchronization and reconciliation.
That'll be available in the Amstel SDK.
Actually, an early version of it will be. The final product, though, will be available for end users with Amstel. And when we do our Amstel briefings, we'll disclose you on that fully. We've done a tremendous amount of work in that area, and frankly, it's a weakness of Penpoint today, in that PenTops kind of basically gets the job done, but doesn't do anything but transfer files. So
that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. I know it's hard to deal with all the changes, that we're going through, but from my own personal standpoint, as someone on the inside I think that the support of AT&T is really necessary and a big advantage over the long haul. The opportunity to take advantage of communications technologies and services they have is a huge opportunity for us to build better products, and our ability to focus is going to end up by us building better products that ship in higher volumes. Those are the key reasons that we did this. So it'll take a little while for that to materialize, but we appreciate all your support, and I'll continue to try and improve the way we do business with you. Thanks. If you want to stick around in the halls and answer more questions, that would be great. We're going to break for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to do a little demo of David Bieberman's next generation pencil product. Maybe demo off a little more. For those who haven't seen the personal communicator, haven't seen a full demo of it, I can give you one right over here in the next class.